Across the country, there are more and more people who are no longer satisfied just to live in a democracy where that's like the label applied to our country. They want it to mean something in practice, and they're fighting back to make that happen. And joining us now to talk about some of these efforts going on around the country, Hedrick Smith, a Pulitzer Prize-winning former New York Times reporter and editor, and also he's got the new documentary, The Democracy Rebellion, on PBS. Hedrick, welcome to The Damage Report.
John, great to be with you.
Very glad to have you here. So tell me about this democracy rebellion. What are some of the forms that it's taking?
Well, the most important thing is it's being ignored by most of the media. What's going on is there is a rebellion going on in states like North Dakota, Florida, North Carolina, South Dakota, Connecticut, California. People are, as you said, fed up with Washington. They counted on the politicians to fix the broken system, stop the big money, stop suppressing the votes, fix gerrymandering, and nothing's happened. So the people are taking power into their own hands. And what's amazing is, contrary to what most people believe today, people power actually works. Last year, the last election in 2018 was the best year in 50 years for political reform in this country. 5 states adopted gerrymander reform. States like Florida, Maine, North Dakota, believe it or not, adopted election law reforms. A half a dozen other states made voting easier. Big cities like Baltimore and Phoenix and Denver and Portland, Oregon adopted public funding of campaigns. People power is on the move. People want to fix the system. They want the elections fair. They don't want it dominated by dark money. And they want to get to vote and have their votes counted.
And so what you're talking about, it sounds pretty historic that people are getting directly involved because of their frustrations over decades of inaction in these areas. And yet we're apparently not seeing a lot of actual coverage of it in comparison to other aspects of the election, things like that.
You're not seeing coverage, but it's actually begun to have an effect. For example, the gerrymander reform that's taken place in states like Florida and Pennsylvania has already changed the political arithmetic in the elections of the last couple of years. So you're seeing a bit of a change in Congress. You're going to see a much bigger change in the next decade because 15 states have adopted gerrymander reform. California has done a pretty good job at smoking out dark money, the Koch money network and networks like that. So they've shown how you can force the big donors out into public, and when they get out in public, some of them don't want to give. So it begins to at least inform voters. And that does have an impact on elections. So this is not just kind of wonky political science stuff. This is practical power politics, and people are starting to understand they got to get off the sidelines, they got to get off the couches, and they got to do something. And they can get something done.
You know what really amazes me about it's the specificity of some of the efforts that are being done. That, like, when you hear people talk about populist movements and rage against the establishment, there's sort of this like implied, they're mad, but they don't necessarily know how things work or why things are broken. But it seems like in these movements, there's very specific grievances with a sophisticated understanding of the various ways that the system has been manipulated. It seems like there's a lot of education going into crafting the goals of these various efforts.
John, you're absolutely right on. What's amazing is actually how smart these people are. And we're talking average people. When you look at this film, The Democracy Rebellion, you're going to see yourself, your cousin, your uncle, somebody you're related to. These are ordinary people. You don't know their names. They're not famous. They're not political stars. They're not like any of the people you just had on the air that everybody knows their faces. These are ordinary people, but number one, they're angry. Number 2, they're smart. Number 3, they're organized. And number 4, they're tenacious. And number 5, they're bipartisan. What's amazing about most of these reform movements that you see in the Democracy Rebellion is they go across party lines. You've got a movement, for example, in North Dakota called the Badass Grandmas of North Dakota. It's led by a bunch of women in their 70s. And the one leader is Republican, another leader is Democrat, some of the others are independents. It goes across the board. If you look at Colorado, where they had a vote to roll back Citizens United, that Supreme Court decision that opened the floodgates to all kinds of corporate and billionaire money in campaigns, what you find is that every single county in the state of California, 64 counties, the red counties, the blue counties, the purple counties, all of them voted about 70% for reform. So when you go to the grassroots, you don't see the partisan divide that you see in Washington and in lots of state capitals. That's impressive. But what's also impressive is what you said, how smart these people are and how determined they are. In Seattle, I met a woman named Linda Bach. She looks like a walking beer barrel with a green t-shirt on. Cute, funny, folksy, friendly woman. She personally collected 21,000 signatures to put on the ballot a referendum to vote against Citizens United, corporate money, billionaire money, and campaigns. You see that all over the place. In Michigan, it was Katie Fahey, a 28-year-old graduate student who posted something on Facebook that triggered a movement in Michigan that led to 425,000 signatures, and he voted in Michigan to roll back gerrymandering. I mean, there's ferment out there. There's tinder out there. There's anger, frustration, and disenchantment. But there's also a realization that the politicians, the powers that be, are not going to fix things. And if it's going to get fixed, our democracy has got to be fixed by us, by we the people. We've got to do it.
I think that to some extent you've gotten into this area, but I'm curious, how much of this do you think, like I know that one of the ways that these sort of like popular rebellions is often pitched is that it's against the current administration. From what you've seen in these different efforts, let's say Donald Trump loses in 2020.
Nothing to do with Trump. This has got
you don't think that will change it at all?
Well, it may change some of the political arithmetic, but the motivation is pre-Trump. What really kicked this off was a Supreme Court decision 10 years ago, literally 10 years ago this month, on January 21st, 2010, the Supreme Court threw over a century-old ban on corporate contributions and campaigns, and it angered people. You started to see legislatures in Hawaii and Massachusetts and Connecticut, all over the place, start to send instructions to Congress to start the process of amending the Constitution to overthrow the Citizens United decision. That's what started. The second things that kicked it off was the Republicans nationwide in 2010 ran an extremely clever campaign to capture the control of state legislatures. Why? Because in 2010, there's a census. In 2011, there's redistricting maps drawn for all the seats in Congress and all the state legislatures. And the Republicans wound up in control of more than 30 state governments and the Democrats in control of only 10. Guess who tilted the map for the 2012 election? And you actually saw it happen in the 2012 election. Republicans actually lost the House race nationwide. They got 1.5 million fewer votes than the Democrats did all across the nation for the House of Representatives. But they wound up with a 32-seat majority, not the Democrats, but the Republicans. And that was largely, not totally, but largely because of gerrymandering. What happened was the Democrats got caught by surprise, but some ordinary people said, whoa, this is going against our interests. Gerrymandering is political monopoly. You set up a district so you can win it automatically, and the other side and the independent votes, they don't count. People finally got the message. People took 5-6 years, but they began to understand it. And now you're seeing a wave of rebellion. It didn't have anything to do with Trump. Trump's winning or losing, I don't think it's going to have a huge impact, because people understand that in their state, even if the guys aren't labeled Trump, people who are in power like to stack the deck to keep themselves in power. And the average voter doesn't like that.
Thank you for watching this clip from The Damage Report. For more content from the show and access to TYT Network members-only exclusives, go to tyt.com/Brooke. Wait, no, it's tyt.com/John. Go to tyt.com/John to sign up.